My whole life is focused on keeping her as well as I possibly can. You know, I've had to give up my film career.
To the tributes to actor Chuck Norris, known for his action movies and the TV show Walker, Texas Ranger. News of his death tonight coming one day after we learned of a medical emergency that sent him to the hospital.
Chuck Norris has died. But here's the thing. The man behind all those legendary roundhouse kicks and internet memes? Turns out, we didn't know him as well as we thought. A DNA test has just surfaced, and it's revealing a truth about his past that no one ever expected. Not just where he came from, but secrets buried in his own bloodline that he apparently kept quiet his entire life. So who was Chuck Norris, really? Beyond the movies, the tough guy image, and the myths that followed him everywhere, there's a much deeper story. And now, with science stepping in, we're finally getting answers. From his humble beginnings to the shocking twist no one saw coming. Keep watching as we uncover his life story and how DNA rewrites everything we thought we knew.
So I go over there, and unbeknownst to me, about 10 years ago, martial arts was outlawed in Russia. And if you used it, they put you in jail. And so they trained underground, but they had no teachers. The guys you fight don't even have a chance. I mean, they don't even touch you, you know? And he said, no, we'll make this a seesaw battle. And so we made it fight back and forth.
Born on March 10, 1940, Carlos Ray Norris entered the world in a tough environment. His family was already struggling to hold itself together. His father, Ray Norris, was a World War II veteran who came home carrying wounds that weren't visible. He struggled with alcohol and was often absent, even when he was physically present. He moved in and out of the family's life, like something temporary and uncontrollable. His mother, Wilma, was different. She had strong faith and quiet strength. She raised her 3 sons mostly on her own, making every dollar stretch and holding the family together through difficult times. After his parents divorced, young Carlos moved with his mother and brothers to Prairie Village, Kansas, and later to Torrance, California. Each move reminded him that stability wasn't something they could rely on. He was a quiet child, sitting at the back of the classroom. Of Irish and Cherokee background, he was shy to the point of being overlooked, and he struggled with a stutter that made simple conversations feel difficult and uncomfortable. He later admitted that as a child, he was afraid of confrontation. He wasn't the type of kid people would later imagine him to be. He wasn't a fighter. He wasn't confident. He just wanted to stay out of the way. But in 1958, at 18 years old, Chuck Norris made a decision that changed everything. He joined the United States Air Force. It wasn't about bravery at the time. It was about leaving behind poverty, confusion, and the fear that his father's path was the only future available to him. The Air Force sent him to Osan Air Base in South Korea. And there, in a disciplined environment far from home, Carlos Ray Norris found something that changed his life. He discovered martial arts.
And there's this one Indian kid who just didn't like me, and every day he'd chase me home from school. And I'd have to run by this gas station. This mechanic would watch me being chased by this Indian kid every day. And finally, he just couldn't handle it anymore, and he stopped me and made me face this boy.
Who gave you the nickname first?
I joined when I went in the military, and I'm in boot camp, and a Hispanic guy says, you know what the name Carlos means in English? I said, yeah, it's Charles. He says, yeah, and the nickname for Charles is Chuck, and I'm going to call you Chuck. And for some reason, it stuck with me, and from that point on, everyone called me Chuck.
He began training in Tang Soo Do, almost by chance, drawn to its structure, its focus, and the way it required full attention of both mind and body. For someone who had felt powerless growing up, martial arts became something meaningful. Not just a fighting skill, but a way to express control and confidence. It gave him a clear message. He could stand on his own. He trained with discipline and earned his black belt. When he returned to the United States in 1962 and was discharged as an Airman First Class, He was no longer the same shy boy from Oklahoma. He was beginning to understand his own strength and identity. Back in California, while waiting for a police job that never came, he opened a small martial arts school. He competed in tournaments and lost early matches, including fights against Joe Louis and Alan Steen. He experienced setbacks, losing rounds he believed he could win. But he didn't step away. He kept training, improving, and pushing forward. By 1967, Chuck Norris won the tournament of karate after defeating 7 opponents in a row. The quiet boy who once struggled with confidence had become a champion. But at that time, he still didn't realize that even bigger challenges were ahead. Hollywood in the early 1970s wasn't looking for someone like him. It wasn't searching for a quiet martial artist with no acting background, no connections, and no agent. But that changed when he crossed paths with Bruce Lee. Chuck met Bruce through his martial arts studio. Bruce Lee had heard about a highly skilled fighter teaching in Los Angeles, so he decided to meet him. That meeting grew into something more than just professional interest. It became a real friendship built on mutual respect, discipline, and a shared dedication to training. They trained together and pushed each other to improve. Then, in 1972, Bruce Lee gave Chuck Norris an opportunity that would change his life and introduce him to the world. In Way of the Dragon, Chuck Norris played Colt, one of Bruce Lee's toughest rivals. Audiences watched them go head-to-head in one of the most famous fight scenes in film, the Coliseum Battle. 2 fighters, complete focus right before impact.
So the scene is for me to get the POWs into this helicopter out over the ocean. Well, of course, I have a stuntman to do that, but the wind was blowing so hard that they said, no, it's too dangerous. So what we will do is lift you up out of the water about 3 feet and then drop you back down.
Chuck was not a major star at that point, but after that film, his face became known worldwide. That connection, however, did not last long. In 1973, Bruce Lee passed away suddenly at only 32 years old. Chuck carried that loss in silence. Years later, he described Bruce as one of the most impressive people he had ever met, and said the world lost something that could not be replaced. That loss pushed him forward. With encouragement from his close friend Steve McQueen, who believed in his potential, Chuck began taking acting more seriously. His early roles were not polished. They had small budgets and simple dialogue. Critics often said his acting felt limited and stiff. But audiences saw something different. Movies like Breaker. Good Guys Wear Black and The Octagon helped him build a loyal following. By the mid-1980s, he had become one of the most reliable action stars, with films such as Missing in Action, Code of Silence, and The Delta Force. He was never about flashy effects. His strength came from his presence. People noticed that. Television later turned him into a widely recognized figure. Walker, Texas Ranger, aired for 8 seasons from 1993 to 2001. It followed Cordell Walker, a Texas lawman who carried out justice with a strong moral code. Critics were not impressed, but millions of viewers kept watching. In 2010, the state of Texas named him an honorary Texas Ranger. That moment linked his on-screen character with real-life recognition. Then, in the early 2000s, something unexpected happened. The internet turned Chuck Norris into a meme. The jokes were exaggerated and often absurd, like, "Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups, he pushes the earth down." People laughed, but there was also respect behind the humor. It showed how his image had grown beyond his roles. He laughed along with the jokes. He accepted them, and in doing so, he revealed something that his tough image had hidden for years. A man with genuine warmth and the confidence to not take himself too seriously. By then, the legend was fully established. But behind it, a heavier reality was building over time. People saw the roundhouse kicks, the serious expression, the calm and steady presence. What they did not see was the quiet emotional weight growing in his private life, shaped by years of loss and personal struggles. Chuck Norris had loved Diane K. Holchek since he was 16. They met at North High School in Torrance, California. He was a quiet boy from Oklahoma, and she was someone who looked past that silence. They married in 1958, still very young, and stayed together for 30 years. She stood by him through poverty, martial arts training, repeated rejections in Hollywood, and his slow rise to fame. But their marriage carried a deep issue that never fully went away. During his time in the military, Chuck had been unfaithful and fathered a daughter named Dina with another woman while still married to Diane. He stayed silent about it for decades. When he finally shared the truth in his 2024 memoir, he spoke with direct honesty, saying it was something that needed to be faced. Dina eventually found him in 1991, and he accepted her, but the damage to his marriage had already taken place. They separated in 1988 and divorced in 1989. 30 years of shared life came to an end. Now, let's talk about the DNA story. For years, Chuck Norris talked openly about his heritage. He grew up believing and telling everyone that both his parents were half Irish and half Cherokee. He was proud of those Native American roots. You could see it in the way he carried himself, especially in Walker, Texas Ranger. That was his identity. A red-haired, blue-eyed kid from Oklahoma who faced bullying because of his mixed blood. That was the story we all knew. But then, DNA testing entered the picture. And what it found completely flips that story on its head. Genetic testing was done on Norris's relatives as part of a larger DNA project, specifically looking at the paternal line, the Y chromosome that gets passed from father to son. That test revealed Chuck Norris's paternal haplogroup is IM170, specifically a subgroup called ICTS 12706. Now, that might sound like a bunch of letters and numbers, but here's what it actually means. Haplogroup IM170 is one of the oldest European lineages. We're talking 25 to 30,000 years old. It originated in Europe long before the Cherokee Nation even existed. This haplogroup is most commonly found in Scandinavia, Germany, the British Isles, and the Balkans. In other words, on his father's side, there is 0 Native American DNA. 0. His paternal ancestors were ancient European hunter-gatherers who survived the Ice Age and eventually spread across northern Europe. So, the Cherokee story that Norris always told? It doesn't show up in his Y chromosome. That doesn't mean he was lying. Family stories get passed down. Identities are complicated. But the science is clear. His direct paternal line is entirely European. Now, what about his mother's side? That's a little murkier. The publicly available DNA data focuses on the paternal line, so we don't have the same level of confirmation for his maternal ancestry. It's possible there could be Native American roots somewhere on that side, but based on the evidence we have, the idea that both parents were half Cherokee just doesn't hold up to genetic scrutiny. And let's clear up one other rumor while we're at it. There's this bizarre internet theory that Chuck Norris was actually born in Serbia, that his name Chuck came from a town called Čačak, and he secretly wasn't American at all. That's pure fiction. It started as a joke online and somehow took on a life of its own. Now, let's turn again to his married life. After the divorce, he did not cut ties with Diane. Instead, he maintained a close and respectful friendship with her. In a social media post at the end of 2025, He described her as an amazing person, kind, intelligent, and someone who lived life fully. The woman who believed in him before anyone else always remained important to him. In December 2025, Diane Holchek passed away at 84 in her Texas home after a long struggle with dementia. Her son Mike said, "We are thankful she is no longer suffering. She was the greatest mom." Chuck shared a black and white photo from 1975 showing the two of them with their children. The image spoke more than any words could. This was the second major loss within a short period. In December 2024, his mother, Wilma, the strong woman who raised 3 boys mostly on her own and held on to her faith through hardship, passed away at 103. Chuck described her as a woman of strong faith, a guiding light, and someone whose love reflected something bigger than herself. She lived longer than most people who knew her, but her passing still left a deep impact. Between these two losses, another major personal challenge had already taken place years earlier, and it was not related to death. In 2012, his second wife, Gina, underwent a series of MRI scans. After that, her health changed in a serious way. She began experiencing intense shaking, numbness, burning sensations across her body, cognitive decline, kidney damage, and ongoing pain that did not respond to standard treatments. Chuck believed the cause was gadolinium, a contrast agent used during MRI scans, which he claimed, based on their lawsuit, had remained in her body and started damaging her health. Chuck Norris, a man known for facing every on-screen threat without hesitation, found himself standing in hospital corridors watching his wife's condition worsen. "Nothing's going on here," he said at the time, his voice showing emotion that rarely appeared in his public image. "She's dying right in front of me." He responded the only way he knew, by fighting for her. They searched for treatment options across the United States and eventually traveled to China for alternative care, including chelation and stem cell treatments. The total cost reached nearly $2 million. In 2017, they filed a $10 million lawsuit against the companies that produced gadolinium agents, determined to push for accountability and protect thousands of other patients who they believed were suffering in silence without a clear diagnosis. The case was later withdrawn without any settlement. Still, what the lawsuit represented, a husband refusing to give in, using every resource he had to keep the woman he loved alive, revealed a side of Chuck Norris that no action movie ever showed. He had always played men who refused to quit. But the real fight of his life did not take place on a set. It happened in quiet hospital rooms, holding the hand of a woman who depended on him to be exactly who he had always said he was. Gina survived. She recovered. But those years left a lasting mark on Chuck Norris. They brought a sense of humility, a deeper kindness, and a sharp awareness of how quickly everything that matters can be taken away. That awareness would become important in the years ahead. By 2026, Chuck Norris had already experienced more loss than most people face in a lifetime. His mother had passed away. His first wife had passed away. The woman he fought so hard to save from the effects of gadolinium had lived. But that long battle had still left its effect on him, visible in his face, in his slower movements, and in the way people around him noticed he no longer acted like time would stand still. He was 85 years old when Diane passed away in December 2025. He shared a photo, wrote a tribute, and then did what he had always done during the hardest moments. He kept moving forward. He traveled to Hawaii. Kauai had become a place of calm for him in his later years. The island gave him space, with soft Pacific light and a slower pace of life. There, He could train on the beach early in the morning without the pressure of his fame. He always believed in discipline through physical movement. Movement felt like focus. Sweat felt like commitment. As long as he could train, he felt connected to who he was. On March 10th, 2026, Chuck Norris turned 86. He marked the day in his own way. He posted a video on social media, filmed in Hawaii, with sunlight behind him and a training mat under his feet. In the video, the boy from Oklahoma, once unnoticed, was seen sparring with someone half his age, throwing strikes with the same steady control he had shown for decades. When he finished, he looked into the camera, breathing calmly, and said with a smile that carried everything he had been through, "I don't age, I level up." The response online was immediate. Fans shared tributes, and old memes returned with new energy. For a moment, it felt like Chuck Norris was truly unbreakable. Not just the internet version, but the real man who had spent 86 years refusing to live any other way than fully. 9 days later, everything changed without warning. A friend who spoke with Chuck on Wednesday, March 18th, said he was in good spirits, training, laughing, and fully engaged. Nothing suggested a problem. No sign that anything was about to happen. Then, either that same day or early the next morning, a medical emergency took place on Kauai. He was rushed to a hospital so quickly that those closest to him were caught off guard. The family did not share details about what happened. But in the hours that followed, they shared the news that stopped people everywhere. On the morning of March 20th, 2026, the Norris family posted a message on Instagram. "It is with heavy hearts that our family shares the sudden passing of our beloved Chuck Norris yesterday morning. While we would like to keep the circumstances private, please know that he was surrounded by his family and was at peace." He was 86 years old. Just 10 days earlier, he had been training. He had shared a birthday video filled with movement, energy, and the kind of joy that comes from facing life head-on. And then, just like that, his story came to an end. The statement continued, and in its simple words, it said everything that needed to be said. He was a martial artist, an actor, and a symbol of strength. To his family, he was a husband, a father and grandfather, a brother, and the center of their lives. He lived with faith, purpose, and a steady commitment to the people he loved. Those three ideas, faith, purpose, and commitment, were the same values he built his entire life on. Those values were not formed in front of cameras or at red carpet events. They were built on military bases in Korea, in small martial arts gyms filled with sweat and effort, in hospital rooms where he held his wife's hand and did not let go, and in quiet Hawaiian mornings where he continued to train, because stopping meant giving up, and Chuck Norris was never someone who gave up. For years, people joked that Chuck Norris could never die. But when the news spread, the world went quiet. This was not a joke. This was a man, and now he was gone. In the days that followed, tributes came from everywhere. Leaders, soldiers, and fans shared their memories. Some had watched Walker, Texas Ranger in distant places during long deployments. Others had grown up believing, even if just a little, that Chuck Norris was someone who could not die. Martial artists credited him as inspiration. Veterans felt understood by him. And many people simply saw in him the story of someone who started with little and built something meaningful through discipline and belief. The Internet, the same one that built him into a symbol of invincibility, paused its humor and shifted to a tone of real grief. The memes had always pointed to something genuine, and they were never truly about a fictional tough figure. They were about the man behind the image, the quiet boy who struggled to speak, who lost his father at a young age, who buried his brother in Vietnam, who stood by his wife through her illness and chose not to leave, who trained by himself on a Hawaiian beach at 86 years old because, in his view, faith without discipline was just empty hope. Chuck Norris never claimed to be flawless. His memoir clearly described his setbacks. His life carried visible wounds, and he never tried to hide them. But across every stage of his journey, from Oklahoma soil to dojo mats in Korea, from his friendship with Bruce Lee to long nights by Gina's hospital bed, from appearing on screens in countless homes to his quiet final morning in Kauai, he showed the same idea again and again. What matters is not falling down, but what a person does after the fall when no one is watching. He lived through poverty. He faced rejection. He endured grief that would have broken many others completely. He lived through poverty. He faced rejection. He endured grief that would have broken many others completely. In the end, he did not pass away in darkness or failure. He died surrounded by his family, at peace, on an island filled with Pacific light, just 10 days after sharing a birthday video where he was still moving, still training, still fully alive. Carlos Ray Norris, born March 10, 1940, in Ryan, Oklahoma, passed away on March 19, 2026, in Kauai, Hawaii, at the age of 86. He was a martial artist, actor, veteran, husband, father, grandfather, and a man of faith. The legend was never just the roundhouse kick. The real story was the boy who had every reason to quit and chose to keep going anyway. So thanks for watching this video, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more content.